Thank you. I'm so honored to be here to speak with two individuals whose life really embodies the meaning of resilience and the power of love. And please watch and hear their story.
When you're told that the world that you believed you were going to live in is no longer there, you have to either choose to curl up into a ball or act. And for better or worse, Sandra described me as a golden retriever who sees a bright shiny object and runs at it, and this was a bright shiny object that I had to run at.
My name is Brian Wallach. I am 38 years old. At the age of 37, I was diagnosed with ALS. I know you don't often hear from people with ALS in hearings like this. You don't, because we're diagnosed, we die.
We're just over 5 minutes.
My voice will be stronger tomorrow. That was a struggle to get through it.
Being diagnosed with ALS today is a death sentence. There is no cure. I will not see my daughters grow up. Not because ALS can't be cured, but because we've underfunded the fight against ALS year after year after year.
After I was diagnosed, every doctor we saw said the same thing. I'm sorry, but we can't help you. Initially, we didn't know what to do, but then we realized that if the system won't help us, we have to remake the system.
One thing that's so terrifying about the healthcare system today is that the power really doesn't sit with the patient. The idea that we could flip the script, it's really powerful for everyone who is living every day with a whole set of health issues that are not being addressed.
If we cure ALS, we have the potential to cure Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, and a litany of other diseases, because they're actually all connected. Most people don't know that. In fact, when I was diagnosed, I had no idea.
What is so special about Brian and Sandra is that they realize you have to fight.
What we're doing here is not that different from a political campaign.
Once we realized that there were skills and friends we had that could have an impact and accelerate this work, there was no question about, do we sit on the sidelines or do we act?
Everyone says you can't solve this thing. Can we figure out a way to prove them wrong?
Can we actually do this? Is this insane? Why am I not just sitting at home with my kids right now? Nothing good is easy.
This is not a movie. Our time is short.
I don't think there's any test of the human spirit more telling than someone telling you you don't have a long time to live, and responding in this way, not saying this is something I'm going to get done before I die, but we're going to get this done and I'm going to live. We're going to get this done for everyone.
So give me tomorrow and we can laugh at yesterday, but I won't pretend there ain't nothing wrong today. And I don't want to close my eyes on the progress that we made, but for every inch there is a mile of mistakes. So go on, oh go on, my baby, go on, oh honey, oh go on, my baby, go on, all the way.
Please join me in welcoming Brian and Sandra. You know, I went to college with Brian Wallach, and I always expected to be working on his campaign, his presidential campaign. He was the guy that was so brilliant and charismatic and just lovely that we all were so sure that he was going to run for president. And so today, now I'm here today working on another campaign that arguably can have just as much impact in the lives of so many men and women, not only in America, but throughout the entire world. And so just to start, I'd like to hear y'all explain to the audience, what is ALS and why have we not found a cure so far?
So before we jump into the answer, I'd love to ask a question of the audience. How many of you have actually had a family member or friend that's been diagnosed with ALS? Wow, okay. So those of you that raise your hand know that ALS is a disease. It is a terminal illness. And as you can hear from my voice, what it does is it takes away your capacity to care for yourself, to be able to speak, to eat, to walk, and ultimately to breathe. And so it kills you by ultimately taking away capacity to create breath. And it does this within about 2 to 5 years. So it is a disease that, of course, you never want to hear a doctor talk about. And it's a disease that has been really hard to actually find a cure for, because while it has an umbrella name, it's actually many different types of things rolled into one. But the good news is, and this is the reason why we can sit here today with hope, we are actually getting closer to cures, and we're actually getting closer to treatments. We're developing ASOs, AAV drugs, gene therapies, stem cell treatments. There's one currently in phase 3 right now that have the chance to actually remake the way that we fight ALS. And amazingly, not just ALS, but also Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, and beyond, as you saw in the video. Because the reality is, these diseases are all linked. And if we can find a cure for one, it may sound crazy, but we can actually cure them all.
I just am so awestruck by your courage, because the inclination would be, after getting a diagnosis like this, to curl up in a ball, but you're fighting. Can you talk about how you dealt with the initial diagnosis and then came up with the concept to form I AM ALS?
Sure.
The wife of staff, I'm told.
Well, when we had our 2-year-old and our newborn baby at home, and we were just back from the hospital a week into our second daughter's life, Brian went to see a neurologist because of some of these symptoms of weakness in his hands and difficulty gripping a pen and a cough that was not actually related. But when he called me and he said, I went to this doctor and I was like, well, is it okay? And Brian was like, no. That was really scary for me, because Brian is authentically the most positive person who's ever been in my life. And so I was terrified. And he came home and pulled up in front of the house, and I ran out to the car, and I just said, well, what did he say? And I'm panicking, and Brian was like, the doctor is 99% certain that I have ALS. And I was like, ALS, like, what is that? No, like ice bucket, oh, like that raised a lot of money, like that's good, we're moving, we're grooving. I'm like, I bet it's chronic now, like it's good. And Brian was like, actually no, like it's really serious. And I'm like, what do you mean? What does that mean? And he's like, well, the doctor said that it's possible that I have 6 months to live. I mean, how do you process that? You have your newborn baby in the house and your 2-year-old, and this is the person that you are just like madly in love with and planned on spending your whole life with. So how did we deal with the diagnosis? It was very, very hard, very hard. But since then, we have picked ourselves up and done a lot of work and started this journey together.
And I think it's better than that. We were lucky enough to be hoisted back up our community.
and by our family. And so when you get a diagnosis like this, your world crumbles. But you know that you will wake up tomorrow. You know that you will wake up the next week and the next month. And so you have to think about what do you do with that. And just as Bernstein said it so well, you start by celebrating the very small things. And one thing that I'm going to love is that as my voice gets weaker, Sandra will actually finish my sentences for me. And at first I was like, okay, come on, I know what I'm going to say. But it's actually become amazing because it shows you the connectivity between people. And so that's what we went out to find. We actually saw a doctor ultimately who said, look, you've been blessed in your life. You are a former White House lawyer. You are a federal prosecutor. You talk for a living. You actually have a shirt that says 100% extrovert on it. Could you actually use this to help people? And so we flew around the country and we tried to think about what we could do to help. And the answer was there was a lot that we could do. The question was, do we have time to actually make it real? And can we find people that would join us in making it real?
And I'm not trying to gloss over the severity of the diagnosis and the situation, but the alchemy of the two of you with your unique backgrounds and talents in politics, in law, in the world of nonprofit, in the world of communications. How did you figure out where to start in this battle?
I think the best answer is a lot of trial and error and a lot of asking questions. I did something that I learned to do as a federal prosecutor. I ask questions and I listen. And it's become a joke when I ask because when our first daughter was born, I went out to interview a family that had actually worked with the nanny that we hoped to hire. And on the way out the door, Sandra turned to me and said, okay, this is very important. Ask questions, listen to the answer, and ask follow-up questions. And I looked at it and I was like, you realize that is actually my job. That's what I do for a living. And so to your question, Lise, that has become probably the most important thing, is trying to find out what is missing and trying to find out what people need is so important. Because we're in a world where we're all stretching in 1,000 different directions. So for us, the question was not, could we bring together our skills to make something real? It was, could we bring together our skills and actually help people in a meaningful and impactful way?
And what's so incredible is from the moment you got that diagnosis over 2 years ago, today, I Am ALS org has a community of over 25,000 men and women who are brought together. And can you talk to us about this community and the hopes and dreams of this community that you've helped bring together?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm so appreciative of is when you get an ALS diagnosis, as you said, it's very easy to curl up in a ball and just be defeated. Also, when you get this diagnosis, one thing I never realized is how afraid you would be. You're like, well, am I going to lose my job? Are people going to treat me like other? If I see them, are they just going to be all sad around me all the time? Is my whole life going to change, not just because my future is uncertain, but in the moment, the whole world will interact with me differently? So all of these anxieties that you have when you get diagnosed typically it makes it hard for patients to become advocates. And also, historically, there have been no survivors. So you don't have anyone to connect to, right? To be inspired, they did it, I'm gonna do it, right? So the way we sit in these chairs are, somebody has to be first.
And this would be a really weird analogy, but bear with me. In some ways, I actually feel like we're back at our first wicked Yale, where you meet the most amazing people you would never actually would have crossed paths with in life, but they inspire you to do things that you never thought you could do. And that is what this community is. It's patients, it's caregivers, it's doctors, it's nurses, it's people that have lost loved ones to this, that have all come together and said, look, this may not save my life, this may not benefit me directly, this may not impact me directly, but I know
that by giving 5 minutes today, I can actually make a huge difference, and that is an incredible, incredible gift.
Whew, I agree. And I'm looking at the kind of support that you've enlisted already for this mission, and you've got a great investment from the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, and you already have lobbied Congress, and you've testified, and you helped convince Congress to double the funding for research for ALS, and that's such an achievement. So what do you think you've learned in terms of starting a mission that everyone looks at and says, this is so impossible, we don't have a success story to share with you, and fighting for to be the first success story? What have you learned about disrupting the status quo?
I think the biggest takeaway that I have is it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail as long as you get back up again and keep going. And that you will never succeed on your own or in the first moment, that if you reach out to others and ask them to help you, ask them to be a part of it, you'll be amazed at the response that you will get.
Yeah, I mean, well, we met on the 2008 Obama campaign, so like our whole relationship and our time together is defined by seeing something impossible happen, right? So that's just the way it is. It's always impossible before it's possible. And along the lines of the community, I just like, I don't know for everyone here today, maybe you're dealing with something like this and maybe you're not, but I just want to say something about friends for a second. You think maybe, and I thought before this diagnosis, that friends are just like people to have fun with. But like, our friends have literally been saving our lives. So many of you are here today, and our friends have literally made this I AM ALS work possible. Everyone has a day job, and everyone is pitching in, and everyone has a superpower, and everyone is so deeply committed. So in your own lives, just like think about that community of friends and people around you, and just like know how much you mean to the people in your life and how much they mean to you. I mean, it's just what they have done for us is what's making this possible.
And I'm hearing you share your story, and I'm just so moved by how wise you are and the wisdom that you're sharing with us, but the humility that you're going forth into the world. But sharing your story publicly can't be easy. How has it been going out into the world and becoming an activist, and just right after you had had your second child?
So I don't know if it was actually visible in the video, but right after I finished testifying, I made a beeline for the doorway. And I literally ran to the bathroom and just broke down and cried. And I think that as an apt analogy, it's moments of strength punctuated with moments of weakness, but both are important. And both can bring us together and create a common humanity that makes this journey possible. You know, we all carry burdens, I think is the biggest thing that I've learned throughout this journey. And if we simply put them away, we don't embrace a fundamental part of who we are as people. We are living these amazing lives on Instagram, but we're also living these difficult lives where our mothers, our brothers, our friends are burdened with disease or with poverty or with whatever the issue might be. When we embrace those, when we talk about them, we're actually stronger as a community, stronger as a country. And that, to me, has been one of the sources of strength as we talk more publicly about this fight and try to create some hope.
I found talking to survivors who have lived through and come out on the other side in some way, shape, or form of tragedy, of adversity, what's most surprising is that pretty much no one wants to go back to their previous life, even with the ease, with, you know, glorifying what life was like in the before phase. How do you feel about your life going forward, and what's the biggest lesson that you think that this fight has taught you?
Your turn.
Oh, God. I mean, I think it's just the people. I just think it's the way that people have taken care of us. It was very, very, very hard to be alone with the diagnosis with just a few family members for months and months, and to interact with people and be like, hey, how are you? And you'd be like, great, yeah. You know, like, oh, it must be so hard with a new baby and a 2-year-old. And you're like, oh, that's the worst. You know, and so it's just like living in that secrecy was so brutal. And when we decided to be public about what we were going through, the way our community both helped us drive this mission and wrap themselves around us, it was just incredible. And now I talk about it all the time. I mean, I get in a cab and the cab driver is like, how's your day? And I'm like, well, it's hard because my husband has a terminal illness called ALS, full stop. And they're like, oh, wow, let's talk about that. I'm like, yeah, let's. And I just like want to talk about it all the time. It's just like the way that people close to you, people you meet just for a moment, the way people respond and cheer you on and support you is like huge life lesson for me.
That part made me tear up because, you know, in these troubled times, it's so easy to forget that there is just so much goodness in the world. And that's why I just want to thank y'all for reminding us of that and reminding us of how life can be hard, but there's so much to fight for. And I just would like to encourage everyone in this room to join Brian and Sandra's fight, because it's all of our fight. And can you tell us, what can we leave this auditorium and do to win this fight?
So there are 2 very easy things right now, and I see some of you in the audience holding your phone. So if everyone wants to take them out, there are 2 things you can do. You can go to Twitter and follow IamALS.org. You can join us on our website, www.iamals.org. And when you go there, the first thing you're going to see is a video. And that video is less than a minute and explains what ALS is. Send that video to 5 friends. Start talking about these things, and what you'll find is that when you're open, openness creates more openness. Hope creates more hope. Despair and desperation, these are a part of our lives, but they don't have to drive us. We can actually build a brighter future. We can be involved by our community. We can be involved by love. And that when we fall, we can get back up again, not on our own, but with everyone else around us, helping us in building a better world with us and for us.
And going forward, personally, what do you think is the hardest part of this for you, Sandra? Because I think that you, I feel sorry for Brian and everything, but I can tell how much you, watching your loved one, and what advice would you have for other caregivers?
Man, I really love this guy. And I think the hardest thing is to remind myself on hard days that there is authentically a reason to be hopeful. The science is there. We are making breakthroughs that haven't happened before. And there is a reason to be hopeful. So if you know someone living with ALS, if you're a caretaker for someone with ALS, please live with that hope, because it's not about whether we will find a cure. It's about whether that cure will happen 10 to 15 years from now or 2 to 5 years from now. It is coming.
thank you so much for sharing this story with us. Thank you. I know that I am inspired and moved, and we all are going to be moved into action. Thank you.
Thank you.